So what I'm hearing is
Mm-hmm.
if you're overwhelmed and stressed
Mm-hmm.
and have too much stuff to do, get rid of the thing that brings you the most joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't like that answer?
I'm going to go crawl in a hole and hide and weep.
People love my inspirational talks, Mike. Welcome to the Marketing Team of One podcast, where we have conversations about the issues one-person marketing teams face when trying to meet their goals with limited time and budgets. Now here's your hosts, Eric and Mike.
So today we wanted to sit down and talk a little bit about how to fit a bunch of things in a tiny space, right? And how like you feel like you don't have any more space. Like the bandwidth is just, you don't have it, right?
There's only so many hours in a day. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Nobody's figured out how to create more hours in the day.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I mean, we can kind of go through.
Is this like flying from like across the date line, basically? Is this
gain
the
a day
thing?
by flying from. How would that work?
So like Hawaii
is
pretty darn close to the end of the day, whereas and then you've got like New Zealand they're in the future right now.
So if you went from Tokyo to Honolulu, you'd basically gain a whole day almost.
Potentially.
Like 20 hours.
That's one way. But that's not practical
and
daily.
Expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flights. Introducing airplanes into this is not is not the answer.
That's
right?
going to be a big no-no. Yeah.
All right. So you came up with a list of potential ways that we could squeeze a little bit more in, like to open up a little more bandwidth for our days.
Yeah, I think in the past we've kind of outlined some of the challenges that people, the bottlenecks. We talked about this earlier or in another podcast, but we all run into these bottlenecks in our day-to-day or week-to-week. And so we thought that we would the one that really stood out was bandwidth. Like, how do I get more? How do I put 5 pounds into a 1 pound container? Like, how do I maximize and get more and more efficient? So we've had some conversations about this, and I really like the idea of starting with little small steps that you can do, and then moving all the way up to big monstrous,
big things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when it comes to bandwidth, they there might be some frustration, like, oh, I've got all these things to do and I'm just not getting things done, or like I'm over here doing this and that's preventing me from getting this done, and this is super important, and so there might be frustration that you're not getting things done. There might be just a frustration that you have to work 10, 12-hour days to try and fit it all in. But so the whole point here is to talk about different ways that maybe we can get more done or get the right things done.
Yes.
In time. Yeah.
Be very strategic in what you do. So, yes, thank you. And I think what you need to first do is look at what are your strengths, you as an individual. As we talk to marketing teams of one, they came from certain backgrounds that they are passionate about writing, or they're passionate about design, or they're passionate about marketing, or all kinds of different facets fall under that description of a marketing team of one. So you need to discover what is your sweet spot. What do you love to do? What are you great at? And what makes the most impact for your company? And then from that, make decisions and kind of look at all of the things on your plate, because you're you're just doing what puts you in that flow state every single day. But we all know there's email, there's a phone call, there's something on the website that needs to be fixed, and blah, 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 blah. There's all these take away from that kind of flow, like get into your groove, right? So look at what your tasks are, kind of take a inventory of all the things that you're asked to do throughout your day. And then that's where you kind of start looking at what can I do? Yeah. Align that with goals that are given to you or you've decided to work on as far as outreach or whatever your marketing goals are. Obviously talk with leadership over that and get buy-off on that. And then start to assess, like, what are the things that are going to make the most impact with the least amount of either effort or money or make those decisions. Yeah. So that to me is kind of the beginning or the genesis of this process. I think there's always going to be admin things that need to be done. There's little tiny tasks or little things that need to be written or sentences or cleaned up or database fixes or things like that. I think you've got some examples of this, but this is probably where you can dip your toe into this AI world, because that
would be kind of the starting point, right? Like you've got your list of things that you've done an assessment of what you do every day, right? And you're trying to figure out where you can maybe trim the fat or something, right? Or not so much trim the fat, but be more strategic and
use
in things, right?
Yeah, as I like to say, what are you burning your calories on? Whatever puts you in that most efficient state of work, I guess you could say, and then try to, like you say, trim the fat or clean out a lot of the things that are not necessarily in your give you joy.
Yeah,
let's say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying like when you're looking at that, like AI would be a good first step.
Yep.
Like I'm assuming because it's relatively cheap, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you can I'm assuming you can find it. It's so malleable, right? To different situations.
It applies to so many different,
right. So it's not like you're going to a specific like tool that does this one thing, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, talk a little bit about AI and what you're thinking about, like when you're trying to increase your bandwidth. What do you see with AI? Or
and I'd love to hear what you have, because I think that's what's interesting is everybody uses it in different, like you said, the varied effects of what AI can produce is incredible. I've seen people, for me, I use it a lot for just I'm not a strong writer, and I'm good at editing writing, but I'm not good at like blank page. Here you go, start writing a blog or whatever.
That blank page is
evil,
tough. Yeah.
So I look at it as tools for analysis, quick analysis on things.
Yep.
Quick tasks as far as genesis for ideas, or helping me kind of think in different mental models about problems and how to solve them and approach them. Those are really helpful.
Yeah.
I never use it for generative, like just write me a thing. You know, there's always something that I'm training it on that's a genesis or a little, starter idea, concept, or maybe even an outline for something. I want to cover these many things. Maybe you can help me think through that. So it's good for, I guess, sounding board stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like a thought partner, right? Like you're running ideas by it, and just kind of maybe there's something else that gets said that gets you thinking and gets you further down the path or something, right?
How do you use AI?
It's funny. I've had a journey, right? And I think if you're in the spot where you're maybe not using it all the time, I think it can be like, oh, I've got to learn AI, and that in itself feels like, how am I going to learn AI on top of it? And so I think there's a little bit of a journey that I've been on with it, and where I really started noticing it is in just like little things that I've said this before, like even before AI came around. Like I've got this philosophy in my head that's like, if it feels like this is too hard or it's taking too long, it probably is. There's probably a way to speed that up, right? And so I come into this AI age with that in mind, right? So like one example is I had to do something where I had to list out the days of every Saturday and every Sunday for 4 months, and I needed to format it a very specific way to include the day, the month, the date, and a time frame. And the times didn't change, but like it really wasn't in a clean spot anywhere, right? So I could ask AI, hey, can you give me every Saturday and Sunday between this date and this date, format it this way, and it spit it out in seconds. And then I had that I could use to put into a couple different places because I needed it in a bunch of different places. The old way, there's a whole bunch of different ways you could do it. You could probably put it in a spreadsheet or whatever, but like you have to know all the formulas to do all that, right? I just said it was as simple as give me the dates, give it to me in that format, and then I had something. If I retyped all that out, it's a micro change, but it could be, if you start identifying those things, I think as a starting point, you start seeing that, and then you can build from it from there. And I think that's where I've seen on my AI journey, it was these little things, and then to where I was using it maybe once, twice a week when I thought to do it.
Yeah.
And then you start getting more confidence. Your mind starts opening to more opportunities, and you start using it more. But if you're at that like beginning point, I think thinking about things like stupid things, like just reformatting things, right? Like, you have a list of things that you want to change things around, or maybe you have a simple spreadsheet and you want it to change the order of some things, or, there's so many things that you can just like little things that are kind of like grunt work type stuff that I know some people probably enjoy it, but I personally don't,
Well, that's part of that audit is like there's things that I love to do that are kind of mind numbing sometimes. Yep. Maybe it's in production or something like that is great. And you're working towards an end goal. That's wonderful. But yeah, analyze what those things are and make sure can a robot be doing this?
Yeah.
That's more the test. Is like, if a robot can do it, then you need to be using your calories for something a little bit different.
Yep.
So,
yeah. And I was talking with some friends, and we were talking about how we were all using AI, and I don't know, some great examples about like, if you're running into a problem, like if you have to do something on a website and you're struggling with something and there's a code element to it and you can't quite figure it out, like, I think if that's not your strong suit, and maybe even if it is your strong suit, you might be able to save a lot of time by just putting that code in and saying what you're hoping to get out of it, and it can code the resolution for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting, yeah.
I mean, especially simple HTML type things and stuff like that. It's perfect for that. Yeah. So I would look at little AI things like that, like little increments that you can do to save little bits of time.
Okay.
And then over time you could grow to do bigger things with it.
That's good information about AI. I think thinking in terms of those filters, again, it's so varied. You have all of those different GPTs as well inside of ChatGPT that allow you to work inside spreadsheets and all these different formula things that can limit some of those minuscule little tasks that may take a long time for a human being to do. But think about whenever you see those, there should be a trigger, like you said, in your head, turn on the AI.
I mean, you just said formula, but like if you're not a Excel whiz, right? Like
right.
if you're trying to get the right formula, instead of like you messing around trying to get it just right, that's another little micro savings. Like, hey, I'm trying to create a formula in Excel that does this specific thing.
Yeah.
It'll spit out the formula. You could try it out. I had an example where I asked it to do that. It gave it to me in Excel, but I was using Google Sheets. And I said, hey, this isn't working. I'm using Google Sheets. They're like, oh, yeah, well, it's supposed to be Google Sheets handles it this way. Here, try this instead. It's like, and if I would have done that on my own, it might have been a half hour or more of me, trying to get it just right.
Half hour is a long time. That's the thing, is be cognizant of how long things take.
Yeah.
Little things are still little context switching. You got to get back up to speed. Little tiny micro tasks still take 15 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's only so many of those in a day. You can't just keep doing those things over and over. And if you do, try to limit them, of course, and maybe try to discipline yourself to say, okay, the first 40 minutes of my day is these micro tasks, and then I set up for everything.
I mean, just think if you could, use AI for 4 small tasks that save you 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, the 15 minutes doesn't feel like very much, right? But you've just gained an hour.
All the more reason to have another meeting then. You could schedule
Oh.
No, that's not a good idea. We don't want to fill up our free time with
That's
meetings.
number 2 on the list, right? Like what can you do to create more bandwidth?
Yeah.
Try and get out of meetings.
Meetings and productivity never mix. This is not something that I mean, rarely do they provide that. And I feel like the bigger the organization, the more that's true.
Yep.
Because there's so many other dynamics that take place in larger organizations that make meetings very ineffective. And I know that some of the big organizations have run into such a problem with this that they limit their meetings to stand up only 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like Google, I think, is legendary for that. They're like, okay, you want to have a meeting? Great. We're going to go walk. Steve Jobs did that too. We're going to go walk for half a mile, and you can talk about it. And then when the walk's over, we're done with this meeting. Yeah. Because they can be such a time suck, and they're sometimes selfishly created by people in leadership. So what types of steps should people take? Be very disciplined with that schedule, right? I mean, that's something like,
if you can, right? Like, I think that's part of the, where are you in the meeting dynamic too, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think there's a very strong case to be made that, I could go to this meeting and we could talk about this thing. And if we don't have a strict agenda, or we don't have an outcome for the meeting, right? Like that could go a ways when I could be doing this other thing, right? So I think one thing you could do is just maybe check in. Do I really need to be at this meeting? So there's a great book called Make Time. It's by the guys who, they're both ex-Google guys. They created this design sprint that a lot of people are taking. And so they have this book called Make Time, and it's got a lot of really kind of innovative things to think about when you're trying to create more bandwidth. And one of the things that really sticks with me is this idea of like kind of questioning these defaults that are built into day-to-day life, right? And meetings can be one of those default things in your organization, right? That we do them because we've always done them, right?
Yeah.
And so taking a second to question this, is this like a default that needs to stick, or is this something that could be done in an email?
Questioning the norms, as it were, in a sense. Yeah. Well, and I think helping to make that agenda is really critical, but not just like, hey, we're going to talk about. Set a goal for like, we're going to make a decision on. Yeah. Don't just like talk about things. Yeah. To make them productive, you need to walk away with results, to-do lists. I'm going to do these. You do this. I do that. Okay. We're going to check in. Just a quick little maybe on Slack or something, and just make sure progress is being made. Yeah. Those are effective meetings. They can be extremely short and be very disciplined with that.
Yeah. That's a challenging thing because there is a dynamic in play, right? You might not be able to, but I think if you're looking for a way to create more bandwidth for your day, looking at every meeting and kind of questioning whether it's something that needs to happen could be just and if it does need to happen, see if you can exert some control on it so it is more focused and more tight.
Exactly.
And it's not kind of rambling.
Well, and then there's the emergency meetings, and this is that, be careful of the kid who cried wolf. I mean, like, you only get a few of those. Yeah. You don't get all. Not every meeting is an emergency meeting.
Yeah. And whose emergency is it?
Exactly. Yeah. What's the emergency? And that's a deeper conversation with leadership if they're the ones calling emergency meetings. Yep. If there's so many emergencies, then figure out a system to at least get people's heads around frequency rates, or like what level of what is the emergency, like is it about this or that, or topics. There can be a pattern to chaos, I guess. If chaos is part of the mix in that office, try to put some systems around that chaos. And I think that's possible. It sounds weird to say it like that, but there can be a way that's healthy for people to understand that stuff's going to go wrong. And we're going to be available for it during these times. I'm thinking of like the end of big projects for us, whether it's print projects or it's web-based projects. There's chaos at the end of it. You post something, people take a look at it. Oh my gosh, that's spelled wrong, or that page doesn't work, or whatever.
So I'm a huge Saturday Night Live fan, right? And like I listen to anything I can get my hands on. And there's a repeating thing, right? No one would describe that scenario as calm.
Absolutely.
That
not.
week, calm, right? They've figured out how to deliver something in the chaos. And if you listen to enough of them, they do have some structure to it. They have some meetings that are that need to happen to get everybody on the same page and make decisions and everything. It's inherently very chaotic, right? They've embraced it and they've churned out great stuff. So it is possible 50 years of possible there.
There's a part to Saturday Night Live that stresses me out because I know what goes on behind the scenes. Like I know on Wednesdays and Thursdays, these things happen because we've studied and understood how Saturday Night Live is because we're fans. And so it's every time I see a finished product or a finished show, I always think back to, oh, their Thursday must have been hell.
Yeah.
This is a tough one.
Yep.
Or tough on this group of people that need to do this. But that's part of that's what they signed on for. And they have people that have worked there for decades that understand it. And so there's a system there that does work somehow.
There's an interesting, their bandwidth though is when we get back to bandwidth, their bandwidth has to be, 20-hour days in 24-hour days in some cases.
Yeah, it's a grind for sure.
Okay, so we may not be able to move meetings.
Right.
We might have to accept some of them. If we can nip and tuck through there, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're trying to create a little bit more bandwidth for ourselves. What else can we do?
Well, we can just stop doing things, That's really easy, because you
that really,
you're just done,
I mean,
I don't mean it that way.
No, but like if your bandwidth or your time is a bucket, and you keep trying to throw everything in there, the bucket's only going to hold so much, right?
Right.
So maybe be a little bit more strategic about what falls out of the bucket and what stays in the bucket, right?
I like that analogy. Yeah, that's good. Well, yeah, your bucket is filled, and we talked about doing this audit at the beginning or at some point where you look at all of the things you're tasked with, all the responsibilities, and look at what tasks. Okay, you've gotten rid of certain things with AI. You've limited your meetings. Now you've got seems like you're still working 40 hours a day. What do you do next? Okay, you make a decision. Get really kind of medieval on what all the list is that you're doing and try to stop doing some of those things. Yep. And I know this sounds counterproductive because obviously when you stop doing something, but that's where it comes down to analyze things about like the strategy of why you're doing it. Yep. Is there an ROI to it?
Yep.
Is it making an impact? There's a thing as a designer, I know I love to do these things, but they take a long time. They don't really produce a lot of results.
Yep.
But man, I sure love doing them because that's what I did when I was in high school and in art school. And it's so easy. And I'll spend 9 hours doing this one thing because it's drawing or designing this one thing that's not my job though. That's not the thing that makes me most effective for this organization. So unfortunately, I have to make brutal decisions and say, I can't do this thing that, yes, I love to do.
Yeah.
And it puts me in that flow state. But if it doesn't have an impact and it's not making a difference, it's hurting your whole scenario.
Totally, right? Yeah. So that's an interesting thing, like looking at the goal of what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are you spending a lot of time on something that isn't meeting that goal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing. As close as and as dear as it might be to you, and it may be really, really hard to let go. But if you're stressed out and you got too much, if you've got bandwidth issues, that might be, the thing to let go.
It's hard. That's why I wanted to talk about it because it's not an easy decision to make, and we're making harder and harder decisions as we get into this list. I think that's part of the dynamic of what we're talking about is you're killing off something that gives you joy, and that's a hard conversation to have internally about what you're doing. There are restraints to what your responsibilities are, and they are down these certain channels that you've established early on and know that you need to make progress on. And so focus on those things and make sure that when you get into doing those things, because you can also find a task or a certain part of those processes where you're like, oh, I really love reformatting Excel sheets because I can just click off my brain, listen to some tunes, and just get right into it. It's super fun and I'm relaxed. That's an AI job. Sorry. That's not something that's going to create results for you spending 2 hours on doing that as opposed to a robot spending 5 seconds on it. That's where that's the hardest part of those decisions is really being disciplined and maybe killing off the stuff that you absolutely love.
So a lot of your examples are kind of like you having a lot of agency over everything you're doing. But in some cases, it might be like that you're given all this stuff to work on, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of how you can evaluate things that are given to you by other people and how you nip and tuck that? How do you...
Yeah, I guess that's the nature of work, isn't it? Here's these things, you do them. I pay you.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is if you're overwhelmed and stressed and have too much stuff to do, get rid of the thing that brings you the most joy.
Yeah. You don't like that answer?
I'm going to go crawl in a hole and hide and weep.
People love my inspirational talks, Mike. I think you've been victim to it many times. Yes, that does sound...
There's many people out there who say you should follow your joy and that you're fully realize that you have a job that brings you joy, right?
Yeah.
All right. So ideally, the thing that keeps you coming back is the joyful things. And so
I'm telling you to get rid of those.
And you're saying like you might need to kill the joy to get more done.
Yeah.
What if there's other things to look at? Are there other ways we can get to doing this?
Thank you. Yes, that just sounded horribly depressing. And I appreciate you pulling me back from the depths of darkness there. But yes, I think the perspective of what your job is should be very focused on what the end goal is and getting the results for that goal.
Okay.
So it's maybe bigger picture.
Yeah.
Should be where you're focused on.
Yeah.
More and more. Let's just say
okay. Yep.
More. And that will be a good filter for killing off the things you love.
Okay. So,
because you can fall in love with all kinds of things. And I think your approach should be to find the things that result and with the most impact and try to fall in love with those things.
And so you're kind of talking about goals that might be set as you as an individual of what you're trying to accomplish, but maybe even the marketing goals that are set for the company overall, right?
Correct.
So I've got this list. It looks like everything's meeting, like we're doing all these things to meet these goals and everything, and I'm still just like, I can't get it all done.
So you've used AI. You've automated everything. You've killed off meetings.
Yeah.
You've stopped doing things that you love. Not really. I'm saying stop doing the things that are not having impact.
Are there ways for me to cut out? Maybe I don't think I need to be doing them, but other people think I need to be doing them.
I think at that point, then you need to start looking at getting help, getting outside help, not therapy.
So let's assume a lot of these things are like if you have agency over your whole everything, right? You're making all the decisions, you're pushing everything through. But I think a lot of people that are not that would be an idealized world, right? I've got it. I can do what I want when I want and everything. But reality is you're fed a lot of different things. You got priorities from the sales team, the CEO, all these different things. And there's probably a big part of your week is probably fulfilling the requests of others, right?
Yeah.
How do can we cut out those things, do you think? Can we stop doing those things?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. And those requests sound like maybe those requests on your time are not justified in some way towards working towards that large goal. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would probably, you talked about doing an audit of all the things you do, but I think maybe there's a secondary audit of like, here are all the things I'm doing. And then like, are they being used? Like, are they being utilized? Right. Yeah. Like if you, ideally you've got data on things, like, I don't know, one of our previous episodes, Lydia talked about having PDFs in a system where she could see how many people were using it. Right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So if you're spending all your week like creating materials for everybody, and then you look and they're like, oh yeah, it's been used once, and I'm using my whole week, I think you could build a case and say like, hey, I am completely maxed out. We're not reaching our goals because I'm maxed out. Look at how I'm spending all this time here. Can we talk about like killing this thing or scaling it back so I can reach these other goals? I think it's kind of like, I don't know, getting really good at creating pitch decks for yourself to management. Just say like, here's a problem I see. This is what's happening. Here's why.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'd like to think most people would be rational and think about and not think, well, we've always done it that way. We need to have this here.
Those PDFs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that if you're struggling, and especially if you're not in control of your workload to a certain extent, like being able to have a reasoned argument why we should stop doing that could be a way to kind of build some bandwidth.
The data portion of that is what's so critical, because data just numbers. And that's what's so great about your process when you are starting to analyze websites to build is you go through and you look through that data. Websites are great because they just measure all of that. Well, nobody's looking at that page. Nobody's looking at this content. Nobody cares, I guess, so, or do we need to promote it more? There's a lot of different things you can draw.
I think that's a great example. Like if you're doing like content creation, let's say you're writing a blog or a newsletter, and you're posting it to the website every week. If you go in, we had this happen with a client recently. We looked at their analytics for everything. It was like, yeah, those articles, those things are so far down the analytics thing just on basic numbers. It's like, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of effort. Maybe we need to pivot. Maybe we need to do, instead of every week, maybe we'd have the same impact if we did one a month or something like that. Like just be open to looking at the numbers, refining it. And this is where it gets, maybe you love writing those things. Maybe that's your joy in the week, but if it's not working and you're feeling the stress of trying to do other things, that might be a thing where you're just doing a little less of the thing that you enjoy.
Love. So you still get some joy out of your...
Yeah. We're not removing all joy.
Okay.
We got to keep the joy.
This podcast is all about joy.
Yeah.
I think we've established that.
So we're using AI.
Yep.
Nip and tuck around the edges, try and eke out some extra space. We're saying no to as many meetings as possible, really trying to remove those from our calendar. We're looking at things we could just stop doing.
Yeah.
Right. If we've tried all these things and we're still like maxed out and everything like that, like, I mean, is there a cry for help? Like what
you send up a flare?
Yeah. Like what else what are some opportunities here? Like, is there anything else we can do to kind of open up the bandwidth?
Well, and maybe in some organizations, this would be considered the nuclear option, which would be call for help. Try to get help. Obviously, if you can get help.
Literally call for help.
Literally call for help, yes.
Oh. Never thought of that.
There are other human beings that might be available to help you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally,
like internally.
Internally, that's where you would start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe this person over here. That we work with a lot of small organizations. We're a small organization. And I would say the strength of people who work in small organizations is they're like Swiss Army knives. They do a lot of different things, and they can be pretty, there's a lot of variety in what they do. And that's where maybe they get that joy that we're talking about, is like, oh, I get to do that funky thing, that thing that I'm usually doing accounting, but on Fridays I get to do a little bit of work with the website or something like that. And I really like that. I look forward to that, so that can be a really great resource. That's not super cost prohibitive, I guess you could say.
No, like if other people have bandwidth and you don't, being able to share that's
here's my load. I need this stuff taken off. Can you do this piece, part, whatever? And that can be really effective.
Yeah.
Outside of that, then what if everybody's maxed out? Nobody's available. Nobody can help. Then what? Well,
I mean, I think going back to the list you talked about, the inventory of the things you're doing, right? I assume if you look at something that you do, but you know you're not great at, or you know it takes time. You've looked at all the other options, like maybe finding people outside and hiring one way or another, freelancers, agencies, other people to share that load. They're more skilled or something like that.
And there's different levels of that. I mean,
totally.
One of the things that I know that there's a lot of help out there for very kind of generalist skill set in people, but like that admin thing, virtual assistants, you can have those people hire them incrementally, 2 hours a day, 5 hours a week, something like that. Those are maybe
take a lot of those admin type tasks off your plate. Yeah.
Yeah. They can do a lot of that, calendar management stuff, maybe email management, maybe other little tasks that don't take a long time to teach people, and maybe not a real high risk thing that, don't let them work in the bank accounts and things like that. That might be a little bit more extra. That said, you can still hire other professionals. That's probably where you need to go next, it sounds like, if you're maxed out with everything else. But again, understand you don't have to hire a giant organization. You can hire at different sizes,
look at these
scales.
Different things that could help support what you're doing in a if you're not good at it, right, is one, right? If you might be good at it, but you take longer than you think, and it's keeping you from doing something else. The hardest part about that is fighting for the
resources,
the budget to do that, right? I don't know. I think we mentioned in another podcast, but kind of maybe there's making an ROI argument to people, like, hey, I'm spending, every time we do a YouTube video, I'm spending, 20 hours editing this thing. Right. That's half a work week, right? Yeah. Doing this thing, right? Here's all the other things I need to do. If we hire somebody to just take care of the editing,
they get half a week back,
even if they take 20 hours, I can do all these other things, and stuff like that.
You said something interesting earlier, though, that I wanted to just kind of mention, and it's a difficult thing, and it kind of speaks again to what do I love to do, and maybe not do that if it's not effective. What am I good at? Need to look within yourself and understand, are you a good judge of what I'm good at? Because I would say my meter on that sometimes is not perfectly calibrated as to what am I good at.
That's tough. I think for everybody, right? That level of self-awareness to
assuming that you're not great at anything.
That's my motto, right?
That's how I roll. Yeah,
that's why we have a jar that we have to put money in every time we talk about it.
Self-deprecating jar. Yeah. It's getting full.
Yeah, I think having that awareness is really tough. But the one thing I've seen in that I think might be helpful as people are kind of thinking about this is there's a Michael Hyatt. He's written a whole bunch of books.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly. It might be Free to Focus or something like that. He has a worksheet that you can download. It's called this Freedom Compass, is what he calls it.
Oh, okay.
And it's got 4 quadrants in it, and it talks about things that give you joy, things that you don't, that you have to do, but you don't mind, the things you absolutely hate and everything. And you taking your list and assigning it to those things. The top one is your sweet spot. That's where you want to be doing all your work in an ideal world. The other quadrant is, you could do it. That's fine. There's another one where you should be delegating because it absolutely needs to happen. And then the last thing is, it doesn't matter if this gets done or not. It's not affecting anybody. Just stop doing it. So as we talk about, if we loop back to that kind of awareness and all that stuff, that might be a good resource people could dig up to try and
I think there's
sort that out.
We could put that in the show notes as well. But there's also a Japanese concept of ikigawa. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
No.
But it's kind of a Venn diagram of what am I great at? What provides the most impact? What do I love to do? And it kind of helps you do the same thing.
They don't really address the bandwidth type thing as much, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm super stressed out.
Yeah. I know.
There's not enough time in the day to do all the things, right? What we've talked about a lot is really kind of get real with all the things you're actually doing, right? Like list them out. What are all the things that you're doing?
To look at inventory.
Yeah, inventory all the things and the things you're responsible for, the things you're doing to meet those responsibilities, goals, all that.
Right.
List all that out, right? And then there's 4 different kind of like levels that we can get at to try and chip away at this problem,
solve
right?
the problem. Yeah.
So first being like AI, right? Like seriously look at like making that part of your day. You know, what are some little things, little annoying things, reformatting, like learning, or some of these things that you can integrate in there and shave a little bit of time, right? 2 would be meetings. Get ruthless with meetings. Yep. You maybe just get a little annoying. Do I really need to be there for this?
Yeah. Can I just read the notes? Yeah. Give me a summary when you're done?
Yeah. So like, question that. Like, do I need to be in all these meetings? Look at that list and see what you can stop doing, right?
Stop doing things?
Stop doing things. That's the best way to improve
That's one of my strengths.
Do less.
Doing less, exactly.
If those are you're still feeling the pressure and everything, look for opportunities to have other people help you. So that whether that's internally, share the load a little bit, or if it's more of like a skill type thing that you want to do better as an organization, but maybe you've hit a ceiling. Find somebody who can help you. I think this helps. I think it's a good list of things. It's things that we like to evaluate on when we're looking at times of squeeze.
I think that sums it up really well. A couple of takeaways that I've gotten from this conversation have been build a system around chaos, because I know that that's a big part of a lot of people's work life is that there's this chaos. Try to put a plan around it. Try to understand that the chaos is maybe the norm, and then build systems around that. And then know what you're good at and make sure that you're doing those things that make the most impact. And we talked about those assessments, and we can put those in the show notes. Understand who you are, because maybe you're not great at certain things, or you're trying to learn something, but it's just taking so long for you to learn it that there's no time for you to learn it. That's when you need to reach out or get extra help or figure out a way to solve that. But knowing who you are in this whole equation is really powerful and will help you become a lot more efficient and effective and affect the real things that matter to the goals. The last thing is measure things, because using those numbers can help you realize where you are on that spectrum and where you need the help, and also make arguments against doing things like that's one of my strengths. I do less. I do so much less. Those are my takeaways. So.
Yeah. I know you have a nap to get to, so maybe we should cut this short.
I am really drowsy right now.
I mean, it's the epitome of doing less.
As stunning as this conversation, stimulating as this conversation has been, yes, I still need to get to that nap. So Thank you.
All right. Sweet dreams.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. For more information and other episodes, subscribe to the Marketing Team of One podcast on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcast networks. You can also chat with us on the r/Marketing Team of One subreddit, or visit marketingteamofone.com to learn more.